Greetings, welcome. What is going on, metalheads? Marty here from Heavy Metallurgy with yet another review for you. So Sacrifice, along with Voivod, Razor, and Annihilator, are considered to be one of the big four of Canadian thrash metal. And today I have come to discuss their latest, sixth installment to their catalog, which has been 16 years in the making. Has it been worth the wait? Hang around and we'll find out. Okay, so today we'll be talking about Sacrifice Volume 6, which will be coming out February 21st on Cursed Blessings Records. Yeah, as mentioned before, it has indeed been a 16-year hiatus since the band's reformation and release of their comeback album, The Ones I Condemn, which came out in 2009 to much fanfare and excitement. Yeah, and 16 years seems like a long time, but you got to think about it for a second. The band has been active, going out playing shows, festivals throughout these years. A pandemic happened, a global pandemic. That kind of sunk any band's productivity for sure. But it has given Sacrifice a lot of years to get Volume 6 sorted out and ready for all of us to enjoy. And for a little history on Sacrifice, for those of you that might be new to the band, they originally formed in 1983 in Scarborough, Ontario, which is a suburb on the east end of Toronto. And they were taking influences from both underground metal and the punk scene of the day, which, let's face it, a lot of good thrash has that little bit of a punk vibe to it to make it special. And going through the information for this album, I was surprised and pleased to see that we still have the original lineup that started this band out still in the band today. So you've got Rob Urbanati on vocals and guitars, you got Joe Rico on guitars, you got Scott Watts on bass, and Gus Pinn on drums. 41 years as a band together. The only album I think that showed a different lineup was Apocalypse Inside, had a different drummer. And from a personal standpoint, the band Sacrifice was a huge band for me in my teenage years for Torment and Fire, and my personal fave, Forward Determination. Both of these albums remained constants in my tape decks and or CD player, and they just had this intensity to them, this edge, this darkness that I just absolutely loved at the time. So as we look beyond Forward Determination, I had formed a dislike or disinterest for those albums, being Soldiers of Misfortune and Apocalypse Inside. I mean, was it Sacrifice's fault or was it me? Well, a big part of it was death metal's rise and black metal's rise. I think a lot of people kind of started to evolve out of thrash to embrace the more dark, heavy, fast, and themes of the death and the black metal scenes. And bands like Sacrifice were either slow to evolve or not interested in evolving. And when you look at albums like this, when these came out, I would touch base and check them out, and they just seemed, the same palm-muted crunch. A lot of times the band was going more mid-pace than fast. It just seemed like a band that was kind of frozen in time for me. Granted, as the years have gone on, I have revisited these albums to realize that I liked them a lot better than I did back then, and I have to think that it was me. It was me not wanting to stay anchored to the thrash days. I was ready to move on to the extreme. So for those of you who might not be familiar with this band, what is Sacrifice's overall style? Well, it's straightforward, largely palm-muted crunch guitars, mid-pace dominant, though they do go faster. The fast kick snare beat. It's head-banging thrash with minor punk vibe. There's no layering, no ventures into blast beats. It's just straightforward and urgent-sounding thrash. I mean, Rob Urbanati's vocals remain untouched by time with his scathing yelling style that is sharp, completely discernible, and purposely lacking in dynamics. So, I mean, Sacrifice keeps it definitely old school and remains completely grounded to their roots, which back then I wanted more of Torment and Fire. I wanted more Forward Determination. As they continue to just kind of turn out, a couple records of kind of the same thing, but maybe not as exciting, I lost interest. So being grounded in your roots looking back as an older man, and I can applaud that. Yeah, awesome. But at the time, it was tough. It was tough because the world around them was evolving, and they weren't really. So yeah, this is a welcome trait for longtime lovers of this band, and to others, it can be seen as a fault. So keep going back to the first 2 albums here. What is it about those albums that were so special? Well, they were exciting. They were bursting with aggression and a touch of youthful evil. I mean, a lot of good thrash back in the day that, wasn't the Bay Area. Just that in the Canadian style too. Like early Voivod had an evil sense to it. That Razor was just, fist punch to the face. Sacrifice fit in. They seemed like more of an evil counterpart, especially on Torment and Fire. But as Forward Determination hit, you could tell, Metallica, the more popular bands of the day, were starting to seep into their sound a bit, but they were still maintaining their own identity through all of that, and they still sound like Sacrifice. And Forward Determination is a definite thrash favorite of mine. So as metal went the path of extremity and speed, Sacrifice simplified their attack, lost their edge a bit in favor of more patient song structures and a mid-paced interchangeable crunch. And even though I may have lacked the attention span to remain enthusiastic about what they were doing, the band never strayed from their overall mission statement or sound. So, Volume 6, how has 16 years impacted this band's creative outlook? Before we get into that, I do want to talk about the cover art really quick. The cover art has a kind of a striking image, the solid red background with a very detailed foreground. It was painted by Propagandhi bassist and lifelong Sacrifice fan Todd Kowalski, which, if you go through and look at their catalog, they had done a split 7-inch with Propagandhi back in the day. So there's obviously some camaraderie there. Todd did a great job on the cover. It stands out. It's something a little bit different. All right, so let's dig into the tracks. So we lead off the album with Comatose, which is easily the most savage and fast track on the album. There's a lot of tremolo riffs here, which coexist with, the speedy palm-muted crunches, and a simplistic hook that's like a quick-pick 2-note riff that fuels the fire on this one. Urbanati sounds youthful and sharp as ever. This is definitely my favorite track on the album, and like we say on here all the time, you start strong, you end strong, and with Comatose, the band definitely picks their most intense track and runs with it. Infected wounds are like consumed, self-inflict, your overdose, no breaking free, mandatory. Following that up is Antidote of Poison. I mean, this starts off kind of a lengthy run of more mid-paced tracks that make up the bulk of this album, but the band weaves in and out of interesting transitions in an unpredictable structure with a nice amount of lead breaks. There's a great level of songwriting on this track here and that is just thrash metal to the core. The antidote of poison. Next up, we have the song Missile. A palm-muted triplet crunch riff sets this headbanger off with a sizable sonic mosh pit. And they keep it going for the song's entirety, never differentiating much from the tempo, other than a few abrupt starts and stops around the solo for a nice effect. Those cymbal chokes and jin, jin, jin. Love it. To see the faces of the ones you will forgive. Will this make you free? So up next is Underneath Millennia. The song starts off with a fuzzy bass intro, which leads into a tribal drum rhythm and into more of a melodic focus in the verse riff. This track is well placed on the album, giving the songwriting more of a glimpse into the band's musical maturity. There's a lot of sonic space on this one for lengthy drum fills that come in that go back into the tribal vibe, adding some well-placed dive bombs and a proggy guitar line that feels ever so slightly Voivod influenced in execution. I really love on this track how the bass guitar cuts through the mix. It adds to the adventurous spirit found on this song. Yes, Underneath Millennia is definitely a good one and a little bit more adventurous than what we've seen leading up to it. Underneath the stones, beneath the dirt. The song Incoming Mass Extinction has an ever so slight punk vibe in the motion and punch of this song's tempo and riff work. It's more simplistic to try and get more of a deadly impact out of the overall punch. Volume 6 has 2 brief but kind of tasty instrumental tracks on here. Lunar Eclipse being the first and Black Hashish being the second. which happens a little bit later in the album. It is perhaps the most melodic and moody song on the album. You get to see a lot of guitar interplay between Rob and Joe here, and it really shows off how well the two guys work together after so many years of working together. Very tasty, melodic fills, excellent, well-considered solos. Not a lot of wheedly here. There's a lot of pre-planned solo work with a ton of feeling. So getting out of the instrumental stuff, we go into the song Explode. There's a hugely melodic music break in the center of this track that adds so much class and depth to the album at large that you can really hear where Sacrifice chose to build upon their songcraft after all these years. There's a band jamming in a room vibe on display here that works really well for them, and they do incorporate this in several songs throughout the album. Song We Will Not Survive is the second fastest track on the album, and it arises right at the end of the album, and I kind of see this as the proper ending track, start strong, end strong. This band and their collective of material on this album still has plenty of gas in the tank to bring us this far with furious headbanging and hook-laden tremolo riffs. The optimist is gone. So even though We Will Not Survive feels like the spiritual true ending of this album, we're left with another song to close us out, which feels a little bit more like a bonus track, but it's called Trapped in a World. They end the album with a burner, it's a punk-fueled cover song with a guy named Brian Taylor on vocals. I didn't know who that was. I had to look him up. He is apparently a pop-punk musician, a singer, very good singer from the Toronto days, and apparently this is a cover song kind of hailing the old Toronto scene where Sacrifice started out. But it does show off the band's love for and skill in playing with this type of music. And let's face it, again, old thrash incorporated a nice helping of the punk aesthetic in with its metal aggression and speed. This track is a fun ending to the album, but feels more like I said, a bonus track. So having gone through the tracks a bit, let's talk about the production. To say that this album is perfect may come off as sounding like a bad thing or a knock against the album. Let's face it, some of the best thrash, even Sacrifice's early material, benefited greatly from a bit of grit or blurred lines in the sound field. Volume 6 in a lot of ways sounds perfect, but it allows all the instruments to be heard, but in their own organic way. So it's not a digital or overproduced sound, which is good. The drums sound real, which that's huge. If you got really clicky kick drums or a triggered to shit sounding kit, it's going to add a level of sterility to your overall sound. The guitars, they possess a organic, fiery bite. It just sounds like a damn good band captured in a good studio, adding to these songs instead of taking anything away from them. So in closing, what did I think of Volume 6? So right off the bat, the twin guitar attack of Rob Urbanati and Joe Rico cannot be understated here. And their playing style, the way they interact with each other, it all benefits greatly from having 41 years off and on of working together. Both demonstrate excellent chops and melodic maturity on this record, and it really benefits the album well. Even though some of the drum patterns is like a lot of fast kick snare, he's a great drummer, don't get me wrong. That's just kind of the modus operandi when it comes to old school thrash. When you start maybe feeling a bit hammered by that presentation, you have to look forward to these excellent solos and well-considered riffs and interesting song structures that weave throughout these songs. So when Sacrifice got back together and put out Those I Condemn, I checked out the album online and felt a little underwhelmed by it. I don't know if I still had it in my head that Sacrifice's best years were behind them, but after hearing Volume 6 this past couple weeks, I've gone back and checked out their comeback album and found it to be a little quieter in the production, but still a pretty solid record. And a lot of the things that used to bother me in the past, I can look past and kind of be reintroduced to this band as something fresh and new, even though they are completely sticking to their roots. So leading into Volume 6, the strength of this album alone made me interested to go back and check out Those I Condemn, the one album of theirs I don't own yet. And that is a testament to this new material. It's good enough where I'm like, you know what? I'm not giving this band the chance that they deserve and need. Go back, figure out that I was indeed wrong and enjoy what they have done in the past as well. So I'm really impressed by Volume 6. Is it their best album ever? It isn't. But it's a band that's been doing this for 41 years, give or take. And they put out a really solid, very mature, very well done record. And if you are into old school thrash metal, there is nothing here to keep you away. It's very welcoming. It is what you were listening to when you had a skateboard and your cut off battle vest, a hat flipped upside down back in the day. There's a nostalgic aura about this record, but the riffs and the modern sound are enough to bring it to the forefront as a modern day, by way of the old school thrash metal record, that can compete with the albums of today. So yeah, is it their best album? It is not, but it's an album that I was quite thrilled that I enjoyed, and we'll be picking this up on release day. So yes, if thrash metal is your thing, Sacrifice is here for you. Volume 6 will be coming out on February 21st. Definitely check it out. And that's it. Thank you for checking out this review. Really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff so that you are made aware of more reviews coming up, more album club streams, and more Friday night streams, and of course, more metal. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Cheers.